Hi all, dear listeners. Welcome
Yes.
to this new episode of my podcast, A Digital Tomorrow. Today, I'm joined by Mr. Triyono Gani, Executive Director at the Otoritas Jasa Keuangan, OJK, the Financial Services Authority in Indonesia. Welcome, Mr. Triyono, to my podcast.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Mr. Oriol. It's been a pleasure to be here to have a very nice discussion on the digital finance with you.
Well, it's
And
actually my
also, I
pleasure.
would like to say hi to your audience as well.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much. It's my
Okay.
pleasure and my
Mm,
honor to have you here today. And I would like to start maybe like from the
mm,
very beginning, because I said before that you work at the OJK, but
mm,
perhaps could you please share with my listeners a bit more about the OJK, like
mm.
when was it created, what are its main purposes, and anything else you want to
All right.
share?
Mm. Okay. OJK is basically financial services authority. So we supervise financial activities in Indonesia. And the formation of OJK was established in 2012. So I think the concept itself to form independent financial service authority has been launched since 1998. But since it took a very long journey, political journey, finally the concept could be established in 2012. But I think based on your certainly know about all the political uh, game, and also the theoretical behind the formation of a financial service authority. So it is always followed by the crisis, right? So I think you also probably recall that in 2008, we have a very big crisis at that time, the subprime mortgage crisis. And I think it was a good time to have a financial sector reform. And that's why, based on that experience, our politicians thought that that was a very perfect time to have a financial service reform, and one of which is the formation of OJK as the Financial Service Authority. OJK is very independent, and um, we supervise every single activities financial sectors in Indonesia, and we were financed by the LeFi from the industry. So this is quite different with what we have had previously, whereby we were financed by the central bank, especially when we are conducting the banking supervision activities. But for the insurance and capital market activities was financed by the government budget. So I think the source of fund was also changed from the government and also central bank budget into more independent market-driven budget. This is quite sometimes it's difficult, Oriol, because we are the only financial service authority in ASEAN. They are Southeast Asian nations. So we don't have any colleagues and peer in ASEAN. We are or by central bank based financial supervisors in ASEAN. So to some extent, it's quite difficult. But I heard that one and two ASEAN countries now is establishing the same system as well. Although the system is quite old-fashioned, and it was deemed as unsuccessful in the UK, because the UK now has moved into a different direction. But I think since we believe that all the politicians in 2012 in Indonesia, I think that this is the best form. So be it. I think that's the point where we were established up till now.
Mhm. Thank you very much
Hmm.
for sharing this. And Actually, before moving forward, I wanted to ask you a bit more about well, the OJK sanctions because, well, as
Mm,
far as I know, and based on what you said,
mm,
10 years ago, the OJK took over some of the functions of the Bank of Indonesia, Indonesia's central bank,
yes.
when it comes to regulating and supervising
Mm,
banks.
mm,
So, which is something, as you said, different to other Asian
yeah,
countries. You know, the structure works differently. So,
yeah,
being that the case, what are the Bank of Indonesia's main functions, no, compared to those of the OJK?
yeah,
How is it
mm,
divided?
yeah. That's the beauty of knowledge over there, because there will be always an option. Because previously, before 2008, we never hear the term of a macro prudential system. That's why every single central bank deemed to have their own authority to supervise banks, because they don't think that macroprudential is even exist. But when macroprudential was introduced to the market, the central bank thought that, especially in Indonesia, that's their authority, that's their mandate. So the mandate for central bank is only about macroprudential. They don't want to go into deep on the financial service activities. They will only stop at the macro level. They will see how the market works, what is the aggregation or aggregate activities they will oversee, but they don't want to go very deeply into the little and tiny activities in the micro prudential. So that's the intersection where the central bank come into conclusion that it should be a very clear division between central bank activities and OJK activities. Central bank will do the macro side, and we as the financial service authority will do the micro side. So the level below the macro level. That's the theory. As I mentioned, Mario, the theory is always find their own way, you know. But in practice, it is not really easy, especially since this is very new to us. And previously, the macro prudential is also in the same institution as the micro prudential, in this case, in the central bank. The coordination is very easy. But when we do this separately, in this case, the micro done by OJK and the macro done by the central bank, there is always a problem because the object is the same. The object of supervision is banking, the same, the banking activities. So when they do the supervision, well, I can take an example. When they do the on-site examination, they will do the same process, but in analyzing thing into the conclusion, probably the conclusion will be different from one to another. In this case, if the central bank would draw the conclusion based on the examination, definitely they will draw into the policy, macro prudential policy. But if OJK will draw the conclusion based on the on-site examination, they will go for the prudential macro or micro policy. So I think the conclusion will be different, but the activity is still the same. That's why I think based on our experiences, there will be overlapping activities in the market between OJK supervision and also the central bank supervision. So hopefully this could be less, because when we start the system at the first time, probably the overlap volume would be very high. But during the time, since we're also learning something from the previous experiences, I believe that there will be less and less overlapping between OJK activities, also the central bank activities. So this is the picture what we are now having in the market.
I see. Thank you for sharing. I think it's an interesting scenario, albeit a bit complicated. So I think you were correct in clarifying that because, well, when I was learning about the OJK, even last year, because I remember you invited me, actually, the OJK, to participate in an event about Islamic finance. And I remember that back then I did some research about you, and I had some doubts, about which were your functions and which were the Bank of Indonesia's ones. So now it's all much more clear to me.
Right.
It's going to be much more clear to my listeners as well.
Yeah. Hopefully it will be clear and clearer, because we are still learning to avoid such overlapping and such probably, I don't know, maybe I recall a very good principle. It will be better to have overlapping than missing out something. So I think, I don't know whether this is true or not, but yeah, because for the industry, for sure they will feel burdensome, because too many overlaps is not good for the efficiency of the economy as well.
No, I agree. I think that I know that overlaps are not like good in many ways, but it's always better, I guess, to have like two people doing one thing rather than no one doing that.
Yes. Yeah.
And well, more specifically, I didn't mention that before, but if I'm not mistaken, you work at the OJK's Financial Innovation Group.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you, what does the financial innovation and fintech scene in Indonesia look like? Like, what are these areas' strengths and opportunities in Indonesia?
Yeah. Innovation is very tricky thing to be handled, because some people say that this is new things and still small, and it could be disregarded, but I am not in the same boat with them. I mean, I have probably a different view, because if we talk about the numbers, Oriel, I just heard the president speeches a couple of days ago. He mentioned that we have two decacorn and at least 6 or 7 unicorn in Indonesia. So it showed me that it's quite a big number. It's a significant presence, I mean. So we cannot really disregard this, because even compare relatively to the whole industry, still quite a small percentage. I'm not talking about 50 or 60, but maybe we're still around 15% comparing to the whole industry. But we are thinking about the future. I believe that with this kind of speed, I mean, when we just the first notion to the fintech development, at least 7 years ago, I think we never expected the volume would be as big as the current figure. But this is the concern. So we believe that, especially during the pandemic, in 2 years, I think that the development of the growth of fintech activities is quite enormous. So I'm not really in doubt that they will then be a lot bigger in the future. So I came to the conclusion that we cannot really ignore the development of fintech. But this is not definitely a very easy task to do, because knowing new things sometimes also creating a very big challenges. since as human, this is very human, we sometimes avoid new things, right?
Sure.
The legacy, the comfort zone is there. So they don't think that there will be another upturn or maybe in changes in our everyday life. Even though we know that um, the pessimistic people is basically ignoring something that is coming to us. So that's the fact. But there are a lot, you know. I'm not saying in the public, but even in the financial supervisory institution like OJK, I think the number of pessimistic portion is quite big. They were very concentrate on their own activities, and they think that the traditional institution could solve all the problems. They don't believe that they need new things, since according to the history, probably this is also the thing that I also agree, that the traditional financial institution has contributed significantly to the economic development. I agree with that, but in the future, maybe we believe that the contribution of financial institution will be much a lot more using the digital technology. That's the thing that we believe. So based on this thinking, we always cater the new coming or to the market, but definitely we don't want to miss out. That's the main point why we then oblige them to register in our system. But when we finish examining certain fintech or financial institution, and we come up into the conclusion that such financial institution is not really belong to the market, so we can let them go. So I think basically that's the thing that we have gone through.
Mhm. I see. And I know as well that the OJK issued the Digital Finance Innovation Action Plan for 2020 to 2024. I know that this was a while ago, and well, I mean, it was, I think, before the pandemic, no? So I know that there might have been some changes, but overall, could you please summarize what were the main goals of this action plan? What are the
Yeah.
next steps designed in that plan?
Hmm. So the main thing for the roadmap is that we would give very clear signal to the market that fintech and the traditional financial institution is is they have maybe I will put it this way. We do not expect fintech and also the traditional financial to have a head-to-head competition. So we basically would like to see collaboration between the financial institution and the financial technology, because they're all depart from the same base. They have the same financial customers. We are talking about the people. They also depart from the notion that the market is developed, and also they are based on the development of the technology. So I think those elements are the same between the element to grow financial institution digitally, and also the element to grow the fintech digitally. So I think since they have they share the same elements, why don't they just collaborate between one to another instead of have head-to-head competition? Because head-to-head competition will create a disruption, and also the cost of disruption is very, very high, not only for the institution, but also for the industry, for the economy as well. So we would guide them to have a close relationship and please have a mutual activities and build the same ecosystem. So I think this is the thing that we would expect based on those thinking to develop a very clear roadmap to the public. And we in OJK would guide the financial institution and also the fintech to have a very mutually benefit collaboration between fintech and also the financial institution.
I fully agree with this idea of fintechs and incumbents collaborating rather than competing.
Yeah.
I think that's key to the future success of fintech and in general, I would say of finance. No, I don't think. I mean, maybe initially, a few years ago, we could be thinking of this as a relationship of competition. No, it was like one or the other. But right now, I think it's actually the opposite. No, I mean, one will thrive thanks to the other. No, I think that's the way to look at that.
Yeah, it is very important because I also when fintech first time entered to the market, some of the financial institution thought that they are the real threat to the market, to the business. But when we introduce the fintech activities and also we showed to the market that we were committed to have a very clear cut between the business of fintech and also business of financial institution, they have changed their mind. And I also see some successful cases whereby the collaboration is also very good, a very successful collaboration. I think, yeah, definitely we are not talking about very perfect word. There were then some cases where there was unsuccessful collaboration, but I think since we have seen some successful collaboration, so I'm very optimistic that we could find a lot more successful story between the collaboration of fintech and also the financial institutions. So hopefully it will take place a lot more in the future.
Indeed. And I know one of the key areas when it comes to fintech and in general to any new technology is that of regulation. No? I mean, regulating these new areas is not always easy. So I imagine it must actually be quite difficult, no? Sometimes to decide how to exactly regulate these newer areas. So I wanted to ask you, according to you, what are the main aspects that need to be taken into consideration when regulating this technology-driven financial innovation?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of aspects we should think about when we were drafting the regulation. First of all, I would say that to regulate fintech, it is not easy because we have to find the perfect ingredients. How we then regulate the fintech, because our president clearly mentioned to us that we should be a very losing but still very strict. In this case, we are not really drafting a very tight regulation, but it is still maintaining the safety to the customer. This is very difficult thing to do. And when we discussed this internally, we came up into the conclusion that we have to draft a principle-based regulation. So otherwise, we will then, because this is a little bit sharing to you that we were very custom with the prudential principles. So everything is written down, and it is a perspective based, and also a very detailed regulation. Uh, but it is not working for the fintech, because if we do such a thing, definitely we would endanger the fintech development. When we study all the literature on the innovation, so they will kill the innovation instantly, because everything is written down in the regulation. So um, it will then unsupportive to the innovation. So we don't want to have that kind of thing in our regulatory regime. So basically, we still think that principle-based regulation is the best ingredients for regulating the fintech. But unfortunately, we don't really have good experience on that thing, because this is also very nothing to be adopted in our financial sector regulatory system. But I think since we have started, I believe that we would be more accustomed to apply that system in our regulatory system. Hopefully, in the future, we would be more understand about how to execute the principle-based regulation, because the principle-based would be give more burden to the supervisors. If we, if we draft a very clear and detailed regulation, the supervision will be a lot easier, because it is kind of, red and white, black and white supervisory system. But if we draft a principle-based regulation, so definitely the judgment burden would be shifted to the supervisor. So I think we have to get used to that kind of system, since we believe that this is the best way to regulate fintech.
Mhm. And one of the pillars of financial innovation is digital banking.
Mm,
And as far as I know, Indonesia has seen many developments in that area in the last
mm,
2, 3 years.
mm,
So I wanted to ask you like a quick overview of what does the digital banking scene look like in Indonesia?
mm. Yeah. Even for this is maybe my personal perspective. To me, the definition of banking is not really easy uh, to divine. Probably my definition will be different with your definition, because in the future, probably banking means every single financial activities, not only for performed by a bank, right? Uh, because previously, this is our financial sector system. In Indonesia, banking means everything, every activities performed by the banks, and insurance. And insurance is every single activities performed by the insurance company. So it relates with the financial institution, not to the activities. So if we still maintaining this system, means that digital banking is only uh, an application that can perform banking activities performed by a bank. So I think again, if we we use this old terminology, we cannot escape with the institution. But if we broaden the definition of banking, it could be every single financial activities that relates to our financial needs. I'm not saying the financial activities to the corporations or enterprises. Maybe at this point, more to do with the personal financial activities. So to me, this is my own perspective. I feel that in the market, the banking sector would be, sorry, the banking activities will be broadened meaning, have a broader meaning. Not only activities performed by the bank, but also performed by some other financial institution. As long as it is serving my personal need in financial activities, so I will mention it as banking. So if it happens, Oreo, it means that we have to redefine our law, banking law, because based on the law, we were silos, banking, insurance, and capital market. We are not talking about investment in that kind of regulation, because investment is fall under the capital market institution law. But as a personal independent individual, definitely I need investment. So if I call this as banking activities, means that all the three silos should be merged. And this is the thing that we call as banking super apps activities.
I see. Thank you very
Yeah,
much for.
this is not really applicable to our current structure of it, but I'm trying to read the market, direction. I believe that this would be the future direction of the financial sector. Even in the future, the definition will be blurred between banking, insurance, and capital market. They will be blended into one single package of services, the so-called the banking activities through the digital platform.
No, I think
But
that's a very interesting.
if we are asking about what is existing system, I will then normatively said to you that we were setting the regulation based on each silos. So the banking, digital banking in Indonesia now should comply with the banking law. The insurtech in Indonesia now should comply with the insurance law, and the investment platform should comply with the capital market law. So those are very silos regulatory system. But if we are talking about more broader sense of banking, definitely the merging would be in place.
I see. Thank you very much for sharing. I think these remarks were very interesting, as well as the rest of our discussion. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, which means that I'm not going to be able to discuss like many more topics with you.
Right.
But I would like, first of all, to thank you for taking the time to come to my podcast, because, well, I know you have a very busy schedule, so I appreciate that very, very much.
My pleasure. Yeah, no problem.
And I'm sure that both I and my listeners will learn a lot from listening and re-listening to this episode. And
yes.
No, I'm sure of that, because I mean, the amount of information that you provided us with about FinTech in Indonesia, and what you told us now about digital banking in Indonesia as well, everything, I think it's very enlightening.
Thank you so very much. Yeah. I hope that this is also useful for all the audiences.
I'm sure it will.
Okay.
So thanks again for coming, and well, to all my listeners.
Thank you very much.
And to all my listeners, thank you very much for listening to this episode with Mr. Triyono Gani, and please stay tuned for the next episode. See you soon.